Okay, well, we have 6:15 on the dot. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Joe, could you please put the flag up for everybody's benefit?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic
Which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's hard to sync up that stuff. But, okay. Welcome to the Henniker Select Board meeting. We're meeting tonight, January 19th via Zoom. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12 and pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Henniker Board of Selectmen is authorized to meet electronically. The town of Henniker will be utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. All members of the Board of Selectmen have the ability to communicate during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to, as well as listen to, if necessary, participate in the meeting by the following link below, or dialing the number below and entering the ID number at the prompt. For those that are looking for the web address, please go to henniker.org. It is on the main page of the Henniker site, as well as those for needing a phone connection. For those who want to provide public testimony in the public hearing portion of the meeting, you are connected to the Zoom website. You may click on the raise hand icon in the attendees section of the Zoom to make this request. We have two moderators tonight. We have Joe and Vice Chair Tia. When they see any sort of action on the texting side of things or the chat box, you'll be called upon to give your testimony. When the time is appropriate, you'll be recognized so that you can provide your testimony. For those calling in who want to provide public testimony, please dial *9 to alert the host that you wish to speak. The host will unmute you at the appropriate time during the public hearing portion of the meeting. All participants, please keep your phones and computers on mute unless speaking. Okay, thank you. That's a mouthful. The email address for the town administrator is townadministrator@henniker.org. All right, with that out of the way, we will jump around a little bit here on the first few items just to be a little bit consistent with how we've done things in the past. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So move.
Second.
Made by Leon, seconded by Peter Flynn. It is a Zoom call. We are required to do a roll call vote. Tonight's order will be Chris Blombeck, yes.
Yes.
Vice Cooper.
yes.
Leon Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Flynn.
Yes.
Mr. Osgood. Just, you're muted.
I got him.
Okay. All right. The motion carries. I'm going to say, Scott, you voted yes. Give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
5-0. Okay, thank you very much. At this point of the evening, I'll open it up to public commentary. If there's any members of the audience that wish to address the board, please signal either by waving your hand or putting a thumbs up or getting into the chat box. I see a couple of messages clicking in on the chat box. Maybe Joe, you can.
Yeah, I'm just.
Is there anybody that I can visually see on the Zoom platform here that wishes to address the board?
We do have a hand up, Chairman, for Vance Walker.
Okay.
I believe he came in last time, though, and typed some stuff into our chat message, if I remember correctly, and tried to actually Zoom bomb us.
Okay, so we're probably not going to let Vance in. Mr. Marco, please. Joe, can you unmute
Yep.
Marco? Bill?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Just quick, could you guys explain what you, I think it's the day after tomorrow with Ware. Can you explain what you're going to be doing then?
Sure, I'll let Joe run point on that.
Thank you.
Sure. So the town of Ware's town administrator reached out to us and asked if we would be willing to have a joint meeting to talk about the impact of the school moving their deliberative session or postponing their deliberative session. So our town moderator, their town moderator, and the two select boards, and any of the public would like to get in, and I believe they're going to have the legal counsel there as well, are going to be talking about what exactly is the implication of them moving or postponing their deliberative session.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else for public forum? I see a couple of chat boxes down there, Joe.
Jason Dominguez.
I'm not from, again, it's, I'm gonna chat him for a second, if you don't mind there, Chairman.
Yeah, no problem. Is there anybody else on the visual side of things that wishes to address the board? Okay. Joe, what do you think? Is it safe to move on?
Yeah, he's not responding. So if I get a response, he can always, we can let him know.
Yeah, we can circle back to that. So not hearing anything, I'll temporarily close down the public commentary. And instead of moving right into the public hearing, the select board was desirous to take up the issue of the correspondence regarding item number 1, a letter from Jeannie Aucoin. I'm going to call upon Peter to run point on that. Peter?
Yes.
You can give a Cliff Notes version of what the letter was about for the audience.
Yeah. Yes. This letter is from Janine Aucoin. I think most of us known her. I've known her for 20 years since I came here. Janine Aucoin is a very prominent woman in the town from a prominent family, but she's also, I know her through my church affiliation. Having said that, what I'm leading up to is I fully trust what Jean has written here in the letter to be true and accurate. And for the sake of $11.91, at which she claimed that she never received the bill for her taxes, and the $11.91 was an interest tabbed onto her bill for late payment, she is requesting the selectmen to consider the fact that she is telling the truth. I would assume that she did have her tax bill on time, and she obviously paid those taxes now. But she is asking for a consideration from this board to waive the $11.91. And having said all that, I would like to move that the board waive the $11.91 as a good faith motion.
I'd second that. We don't have to raise it. We have to pay it to her.
That's correct.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to deal with this letter that was in our agendas tonight from Selectman Flynn, seconded by Selectman Parker regarding the abatement there. Ready to call the roll call vote? Chris, yes.
Tia,
Leon.
yes.
Tia, yes, sorry. Leon.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Okay, we will jump back into the agenda items here. Public hearing first up is pursuant to RSA 33:8. The Henniker Board of Selectmen, as sewer commissioners, will be hosting a public hearing to receive comment on the proposed issuance of a bond or note on the proposed wastewater treatment plant. Upgrades are detailed in the asset management plan completed in 2019. There is a link on your website if anybody wants to follow along on the home game. So, Joe, you want to run point?
I actually, Underwood is here with Superintendent Levesque, so I'm going to let them just kind of give a brief update on what we're looking to do. I've asked them to unmute, and we'll go from there.
Okay, before you go on that, Joe, I got 4 comments in the chat area. Is that all stuff we don't want to admit?
I'm not see they're messaging you directly, so I don't see those.
Okay.
This is Dave Merce here with Underwood Engineers speaking, and Ken Levesque here as well. You're hearing us okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, excellent. Well, appreciate the opportunity to speak before the Board of Selectmen tonight. As I understand it, you know, the real reason for this hearing is to try to see and solicit any public comment on the project and the proposed $3.2 million warrant article, coming up. It'll be going in front of the budget committee for consideration, and also will be, presented at the deliberative session coming up. Underwood and Ken will be available there to do a presentation on the warrant article explaining, why it's needed and what will be covered, as well as, the impact to the users and taxpayers, and, what the annual bond payments will result in terms of effects to the tax rate and also to the sewer rates. I'm not sure, Selectman Chair, if you're looking for us to, run through the project as a whole with a summary, or more so be here available to, respond to any questions from the public that come up. You may recall we did a presentation at a fairly recent meeting in December and went over the project, but I'm happy to bring that presentation up on the screen if you'd like, and could walk through it again.
I think education is pretty important on the importance of this bond offering. So if you could maybe, I know that we've done this before, but there's some new members of the audience. Maybe if you could do an abbreviated version, just quickly go through it, and then we'll open it up for questions. How's that?
Sure, excellent. If you'd be willing, I'll request to share my screen if whoever is the host could give me permissions.
You're all set.
I'm good. All right. So hopefully you're all seeing the presentation at this point. And I'm gonna switch to slide view. Everyone's seeing the title slide okay right now?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So again, this is a warrant article that's being proposed for upgrades at your existing wastewater treatment facility. Just bear with me for a moment, guys. Ken, would you mind just hitting the advance button right here as we go along? Okay, so just some quick stats on the wastewater treatment facility. The facility was constructed, in 1975. So you're looking at a facility that's 45 years old. And most of the equipment and components there have exceeded their useful life. They're, very difficult to find replacement parts for things. And just imagine that most of this equipment runs 24/7, 365 days a year, and it's harsh conditions in wet environments with harmful gases and things. Now, your sewer staff have been very diligent, and they have had to spend money on upgrades in the past totaling over $1 million. However, the system as a whole, as we learned through the asset management plan, is worth in excess of $30 million in replacement costs. And unfortunately, deferring upgrades is no longer an option. What we're showing you now will just be a series of a few photos of the equipment that exists at the plant, just so people can get a visual. It says 1,000 words on how old and kind of outdated this equipment is. This is a control panel for a major piece of equipment. It runs on light bulbs and relays, and trust me, your cell phone can run circles around this thing in terms of what it can do. Moving on, Ken. This is a shot of a piece of equipment. This is a conveyor that moves debris, and you can see that in the foreground, most of the flights are completely rotted off of this unit. This is a shot showing another component. You might be able to tell on the bottom that the town staff has been doing their best to weld patches onto this unit, but it's rotted through 4 or 5 times, and basically there's nothing left to weld to at this point. Another picture in a major piece of equipment, you can see all of the rotted off pieces of steel that are collected in the bottom of this trough, and there are holes developing, and the equipment's in very, very tough shape. Again, here's a major valve and fittings at your main pump station. You can kind of see what those look like on the outside. Just imagine what they look like on the inside where the wastewater is going through and eroding that pipe away. This is a shot of some ventilation equipment that's outside. Again, you can kind of get a feel for the age and condition. You know, Ken's doing everything he can to keep this going, but you know, it's really time that something needs to be done, or we're looking at, you know, a catastrophic failure that would be very expensive to deal with as an emergency condition rather than being proactive. The town has been proactive in that they had an asset management report done. What is that? It's basically a report that looks at all the equipment, looks at the age, the condition, how critical it is, what it'll cost to replace it, and then creates a schedule for timely replacement over time to spread the costs out. What we found in that report is there's about 3.6 million of critical upgrades that need to be done in the very near future. Fortunately, Ken and the staff, you know, have been planning for the smaller items on this. So what we found is about 400,000 is already worked into CIP programming for replacements, but there's 3.2 million, you know, made up of several larger projects that we're looking to do this warrant article for. The key equipment is replacing their dewatering equipment, screening and grit removal upgrades, the main pump station. You saw some of those pipes and valves. Those need to be replaced. They're frozen and not working. And then the clarifier is a major piece of equipment with steel equipment that's rotting out. In all, this is just a summary list. There are 19 or 18 items and some contingency that total the $3.2 million, just to give people a feel of the laundry list, so to speak, that we're looking to address. In terms of how this will be paid for, the town's going to have to get either a municipal bond bank or a local bank loan for the $3.2 million. And just as an example, a 20-year loan at 2% interest, you'd be looking at an annual bond payment or loan repayment of $195,000 per year. So the way that the town is proposing to fund this major project is the same way they've addressed similar projects like this in the past. They propose to put 60% of the cost on the sewer users and 40% on the tax base. Again, that's the historical split that has been used in the past. The major question we always see on this sort of thing is, why should any of it go on the tax base? If I'm not connected to the sewer, why should I pay anything for this? And there's many reasons, and these are some. First off, keep in mind that the users already pay 100% of all of the operation and maintenance costs for this facility year in and year out. But there are many public facilities that are on this sewer that everyone benefits from: schools, you know, the town hall, libraries, things like that. You also need to keep in mind that all of the private septic systems, when they're pumped, where does that go? It gets hauled down to the treatment plant, and those facilities have to be available to treat it. Other reasons that, you know, everyone in town benefits, you know, there are public facilities, institutional. You've got the college that's there that wouldn't be there if you didn't have the sewer system, and that larger tax base spreads the cost out and makes the individual taxes for, you know, residential homes less expensive. In terms of schedule, you know, we're still assuming that the deliberative session will go forward in February. We'll be making this presentation again, and there'll be an opportunity for, you know, questions and comments at that time. In March, you'll be asked to vote on the warrant article. If in fact it passes, you know, we're ready to jump right into engineering in April. It'll be designed through the summer and fall. put out to construction bids late in 2021, early 2022. And then we hope to award it in early 22, and it'll take about a year, a little over a year to complete by 2023. And I'll just note, keep in mind that the bond for this, you know, the actual expense wouldn't hit right away either, because you know, you'll be spending shorter money on engineering before the larger cost of construction come in. So that's the presentation that we have, and I'd be happy with Ken to answer any questions from the public or the board.
All right, thank you very much. That was a good, concise, well done show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you de-shared me already, I think.
Okay. Joe, being a public hearing, we are going to deliberate amongst the board first and then open it up for the any members of the public that wish. And then, of course, they also have the deliberative session coming up in February to come and converse. Correct. So are there any questions from the select board? I mean, we've saw this project last year, so happy to entertain any questions. Leon, Peter, Tia. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're talking about a 20-year program for the critical stuff. What do we do about the whole massive project that needs all the redoing? When does that step in?
So that's scheduled for 2040, Scott. That's actually, CIP's also reviewed this request and has tried to figure out some funding strategies. And we do have some recommendations moving forward on how to fund some of those larger pieces, but we can get into that later.
All right. Any further questions from the board? All right. If everybody's okay, I'll open it up for any guests from the audience that wish to ask any questions. Are there any members of the audience that wish to address? I have a hand up. Scott, or Joe, can you let me?
Bear with me here. Can yeah, can they just put their yeah, all right, hold on. There you go.
Heidi, you're on.
Thank you. Just curious, how many of the maybe local, maybe not, septic services are actually dumping at our facility? I know that one of the most locals is the Henniker Septic Service. Are they regularly dumping there? I know that when we've used a couple of companies, they dump in Concord or towns further out. I'm just curious how much that really adds.
We pay for that.
And do they pay a dumping fee, I guess would be the secondary question.
They do pay a dumping fee when they come. We've had some trouble this past year with the electronic part of our septic receiving system. So we spent a lot of time this past year working on that and getting that running properly, which it is now. But we haven't, I think we brought in a total of 8,500 gallons of septic last year, which is not a lot, but we're ready to take it and the haulers know, and we're just waiting for them to show up.
What is that in comparison to years past when you were operating well?
Years past, we could take up to probably about 35 to 45,000 gallons of septic in a year's time. It's not a money maker, even though we do get paid. We get paid $50 a thousand. It probably cost us close to that to get it in and get it out. But we could always raise our tipping fee to, you know, up as far as maybe $60.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. I see Cordell Johnson has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I apologize if this has been covered, but because I was sort of half listening while I was eating my dinner. So I didn't hear everything, but I have now finished my dinner. But I saw a reference in the presentation to a deliberative session in February.
No.
That confused me because we don't have a deliberative session in February. I'm not sure exactly what was meant by that.
I think Chris meant public hearing. Correct, Chris?
I'm just reading off the script.
Okay, there's no deliberative so far by definition, as Cordell.
But isn't this the public hearing?
That's kind of what I thought, but
yeah.
Yeah, but we also get another, people have an opportunity to ask additional questions when we have that final budget hearing.
You're talking about the budget hearing.
The budget public hearing, yes.
That's what was.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. I will make an adjustment to the presentations and name that correctly.
Okay.
You can tell Cordell's the lawyer in the group. He keeps us on the edge straight. Thank you, Cordell. For
bottom line is you're not SB2 then.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? How about on the chat room, Joe? Do we see anything out there?
I have got nothing, sir.
Hang on, I got one here. Do you not see what I see? I got one here.
I do not see what you see.
Kelly is asking for the gentleman from Underwood to spell the names for the minutes, please.
I already responded to her on that, so we're all set.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the audience? Not seeing anything, I'll close down the public commentary, return back to the select board. Are there any final questions for Ken or Underwood Engineering regarding the wastewater treatment pump? Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. And we appreciate you coming out tonight and giving us the abbreviated version of the bond. And it was, thank you.
I think we need to make a motion to move this forward.
I didn't think we were doing that today.
What's that, Peter?
I thought that would come at our next meeting when we actually review the whole budget, including warrant articles and bond hearings. But Joe, could you help me out on that? Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, even if you guys, you were to vote to accept this, I mean, we still have the public budget hearing on February 2nd. So I think it can still be changed at that point. But that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, my understanding is that we vote for the budget after the public hearing on all the budget.
Yep. I'm good with that, letting it ride, if you will. Okay. All right, next up is item number 3 is 2021 town meeting. This will be Cordell Johnson dropping in and giving us an update on this topic. Cordell.
Hello again, everyone. When we last spoke, which I think was at your meeting 2 weeks ago, we talked about the options for town meeting, including whether to postpone. And although no decisions were made, I think there was a sense that it might make sense to postpone the business session. But, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the expectation was we would still have the first session, the election, on March 9th, and consider postponing the business session. Or in fact, scheduling the business session for a date later than we ordinarily would, which this year ordinarily would be March 13th. And for some reason, it did not occur to me until after our discussion to think about how this would be affected by the school district meeting or meetings, plural. And I then realized that the school district, of which I'm also the moderator, so this should have occurred to me, that the school district is considering postponing its deliberative session. Ordinarily, its deliberative session would be held, I think it is in fact scheduled, unless it changes, it's scheduled for February 1st. But the school board seems to be strongly in favor of postponing the deliberative session, basically for the same reasons that the selectmen are thinking of postponing the business session of the town meeting. The problem that creates is if they postpone their deliberative session, say until May 1st, just to pick a date, their second session is the election. And the election has to occur after the deliberative session. So that creates an issue for the town, because the town and school district elections are tied together. And if the school district postpones its deliberative session until May 1, it's going to end up needing to postpone its election until probably late May, which means the town would have to do the same thing. But it gets more complicated because we have the Henniker School District, we have the Ware School District, we have the John Stark School District. And I know you guys are meeting with the Ware selectmen on Thursday evening. But we subsequently, and all of those, the town of Ware and all three school districts use SB2. Town of Henniker is the only entity that doesn't. The town of Ware right now is saying they want to have their deliberative session on schedule and their election on March 9th. And if they have their election on March 9th, then the school districts have to have their elections on March 9th. So it essentially becomes kind of it's not a fight, but it's a disagreement between the town of Ware on one hand and the school districts on the other hand. And we're kind of, what happens with the town of Henniker is kind of depends on what they decide.
Wardell, I have just a quick question. So we can't separate like the election of our officers and our zoning ballot items from the school?
I don't see any way that can be done. It was a town meeting vote at some point in the distant past that put those all together. And I think it would take a town meeting vote to undo that, which of course we can't have until we have a town meeting. So, so I don't see any way to do that. Can
we draft a warrant article for this town meeting then to make sure we can separate these two moving forward?
Maybe. I mean, you might talk to the town attorney about that. But at least for now, there's nothing we can do for this year to separate them.
But there's nothing to say that the select board couldn't move forward with town meeting per se ahead of the school board if the school board didn't have their deliberative and wasn't ready to go.
We could still have, so the way it would work, I mean, we still have to schedule the election and then schedule the business session after the election. But if we end up postponing the election until after the business session, that's okay. It's kind of weird, but there's nothing illegal about it. So we might end up having our business session in, say, middle of April. Meanwhile, the school districts postpone their deliberative sessions until the beginning of May, and so we end up with an election in the end of May or even in June. And I think the only harm that comes from that is that some of you, if you were thinking of not running for re-election, might have to serve an extra few months, or other town officials who are up for election. I think that's the only harm that would come from that, if you consider that a harm. But again, it kind of depends. We can't postpone our election if the town of Ware refuses to postpone theirs, because when there's a cooperative school district, the law says all the towns that are part of that district, they all have to vote on the same day, and they can only postpone if a majority of them agree to postpone. And since there are only 2 here, a majority would be 2. So it gets a little complicated, as you can see.
Cordell?
Yeah.
Just a question. If the town election portion were delayed, let's say till May, and the present town officers have to, or are supposed to stay in office, would it be possible, if any of them did not want to stay in office, to resign and the board, the majority of the board, appoint somebody until that election? Is that allowed?
Yes.
Okay.
Peter, that or they can just not show up. We've had that happen in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going through that too. I know what you mean, but I'm just saying, if it's possible, I don't anticipate it, or not that I hear of it, anybody interested in resigning. But the fact of the matter is, I just want to ask the question anyway.
Great.
Hey, Joe, you might want to do something with Jennifer Harris. I'm not sure that's going in the right place.
Okay.
Cordell, I don't understand why we have to be joined at the hip with the school districts. I have a real problem with having us not be able to get at some things that we need to do early in the year. And if we're talking about waiting till May or June, we've got significant projects, including the wastewater one we just talked about, including road construction, including some other stuff that are going to be seriously impacted by the delay.
Right, but
where is it written that we must be joined at the hip with the school folks?
Well, just to be clear, the things that you just mentioned, such as the wastewater treatment facility, those would not be affected. We can have our business session whenever we want, so long as it's sometime after March 9th. The only thing that would be affected is if the school districts postpone, then our election of officers and anything that's on that ballot, which would be the election of officers, zoning amendments, and that's probably all. I haven't seen the ballot yet, but that would be delayed. But you wouldn't be stopped from adopting a budget, passing, or at least voting on the wastewater bond and anything else.
Cordell, but they're on, Lori, tell me if I'm right or wrong here. Aren't they on different colored ballots? Like, don't we usually get a couple of them during this election? So you have the town stuff and then you have the individual school districts.
Oh, yeah.
So why couldn't, say the Board of Selectmen wanted to move forward and have their ballot vote and get their election done? The school ballots can easily be separated out and they can have theirs at a different time.
The ballots are separate, but the election, because we've voted to conduct them together, need to be conducted together. I would encourage you to talk to the town attorney about that and just confirm that. Where I do know that Ware has talked to their town attorney, and that's what she has said, and it seems right to me. But just to be clear, I'm not Henniker's town attorney, but I don't think that you can. I don't think you can separate the two elections. because the town has voted to do them together. And I understand if you did that, then the school district would be in the position of conducting an election, which they're not really set up to do. They don't have, you know, they don't have supervisors of the checklist. They don't have ballot clerks. Those are all our people.
Right, but that could, you know, it might be an additional expense.
True. But as I say, I still don't think it's possible. But you might talk to Bart about that.
Well, then I'm strongly in favor of having our business meeting where we vote on appropriations and everything else. However, we can figure out how to format it with the technology and everything on March 13th.
Well, that's a discussion for the selectmen to have. I think last time it sounded like most of you were a little uncomfortable doing it that early, but that's, I'm willing to be guided by.
I think we need to have a further discussion after the meeting on Thursday because we don't know what direction it's going to go in.
Good idea, Tia.
Right.
What does the governor say about meetings like that right now? Are they legal or illegal?
Meetings like, you're saying if we just chose to have our meeting right now, is there anything to legally prevent us from doing that?
Yeah.
No, there's no legal reason we can't do it. The reason not to do it obviously would be concern about COVID-19.
Sure. Okay. All right.
Cordell, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Cordell, not that we are an SB2 town, but the school obviously is, and that's where this whole problem lies, both in Ware and in Henniker. I listened in on the school board meeting a week or so ago, and you gave a scenario if the SB2 towns cancel their meeting. Of course, I'm talking deliberative session, which they have to have because the election contains the budget, which they have to vote on that election along with electing officers. But you explained a very complex situation where an SB2 town would have to go through a process that just seemed to me to be unbelievably difficult. Now, I'm not trying to put you through that whole thing tonight, but I do have one question. Has anything changed in that process since you talked to the school board a week or two ago, and relative to how many days you have to postpone it, like every 3 days you have to repeat it, and things of that sort? As all that the same, sending out the letters to every voter, having 2 sessions to consider the information from the public, and then the board have another session to vote. And then the final thing was when you did have an election, there was a question in the front of that election that asks the voter if they agreed with the process. And if they said no, we have to go all the way, or not we, but the school would have to go all the way back and start over. Is that similar to what you said?
That's a separate thing. And I actually talked about that. That's the sort of alternative meeting method that the legislature enacted last year.
Okay.
As a sort of a kind of a last resort in an emergency situation. And if you want to adopt that, which this board said last time, you didn't like that at all, and I agree. And the school boards all said they didn't like it either. That's this convoluted process where instead of actually having a meeting, you have these virtual sessions that are run by the governing body, which in the case of the school district would be the school board. And then the school board itself amends the warrant and puts that all on a ballot. And then you have this drive-up voting process And you're right. If the first question on the ballot is, do you approve this process? And if the voters say no, then everything is defeated. But that's the school boards, I think, uniformly said we don't want to use that process, and you guys said that 2 weeks ago too, and I agree. It's a terrible process. I would not suggest that.
Thank you.
So that's all I have on that.
All right. Any other questions for Cordell?
Also, I take it the questions are going to continue on Thursday.
But just a question, given what you know now about the way the regulations work and given the experience we had last year, if the technology that we tried to use last year had worked, would that be a process you would think would be acceptable for this year?
Oh yeah, I think legally that's perfectly acceptable. Logistically, as you know, it was a nightmare, and I would be very nervous about trying to do that again.
Yeah, I think we all walked away from that one saying we would never do that again, and we're going to be in person the next time.
So we're faced with whatever we do, we have to come up with an alternative meeting format.
Well, I think we want to think very hard about what we're going to do, and you know, I wouldn't, as I said 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't object to something where we maybe have people in 2 rooms and have a microphone and speakers, but I don't want to go any more high tech than that.
Yeah, I understand and agree. Okay.
All right. So just as a side note, there was an excellent article in the latest Town Government magazine there, just Cordell.
I read it already.
Yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. Cordell didn't give himself enough credit though for at least trying something. So I say bravo. Any other questions for Cordell while he's here? All right. Thanks, Cordell, for the update. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Next up on our agenda is, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Dr. Wayne L'Esperance, Vice President of Academic Affairs, to give us an update regarding NEC's plans for the spring semester 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to correct you. Wayne is now a provost at Maryland College. He has been promoted.
My bad. My bad.
Thank you. Thanks, Tia. It's great to be here with you guys, and thanks for the invitation. I thought I would just give you a quick update on what our plans are for opening the college here on February the 1st and the return of our students to town. It'll be very similar to what we did in the fall, although we've learned quite a bit, and so we're hoping it's even better in terms of the opening. So students will start moving in that weekend before the 1st into town, into the residence halls. The students are required, before they're allowed to gain access to campus, to have had a negative test result within the last week. So they will upload that to our it's called the Medicat system. It's just a medical tracking system where they put in all their vaccinations and other medical information for us. So they upload that. Once they're confirmed, they get the all clear to return to campus. When they arrive on campus, they will be tested, and they'll be tested. All the students will be tested a week later. So within that first week of arrival, they'll have had 3 tests. All of which have to be negative for them to be able to remain on campus with us. After that, we will test on a weekly basis. We will do random sampling testing as we did in the fall, about 25% of our population. Athletes that are in season have to be tested per the NCAA on a weekly basis. So we'll be doing that. We have added capacity to our testing ability. We now have our own in-house rapid testing devices. That took a while to get. As you can imagine, the demand for those across the country have been pretty extensive, but those are now, that new device is now in. We'll have 2 total devices that can do that. and our wellness center is equipped and capable of doing that testing. We're also going to be offering testing to faculty that need it, faculty and staff that need it, who are on campus. For some faculty who travel any distance, just the inconvenience of having to find a place to do it close to home, they have the option now to get tested on campus. All faculty and staff that are going to be on campus are required to get tested on a regular basis and submit those results to our HR department. We continue to operate in a hybrid manner where time in each class is restricted. We've increased each class face-to-face time by about 15 minutes per class. It's still restricted. And so students will have some face-to-face, but they also have some remote, some online piece to it. We still have about 20% of our student population that is remaining remote, so they'll not be returning to campus. So that number has remained the same. Our retention rate from fall to spring is better than average, so that's encouraging. It suggests to us that students had a pretty good experience and will continue their studies with us. The first 2 weeks on campus, there will be, what we're going to try to do is create a bubble. So we're going to restrict students from leaving campus unless it's for essential purposes. Obviously, the challenge on that is that as far as the state of New Hampshire is concerned, essential purposes include trips to the grocery store, if they need to run out to the pharmacy to pick up some medication, things like that, they will be able to do it. In terms of their meals and all of that, we'll follow the protocols we did in the fall, in which for the first 2 weeks, we'll be doing the grab and go option. After that, assuming our numbers remain low, the students will be able to go out about in town and take advantage of all of the great things that Henniker and neighboring towns have to offer. If for some reason our numbers are of concern, the president can always extend the quarantine on campus. And in the past has expressed more than a willingness to do so if that's a way to make sure we stay safe and that our community remains safe. So we're absolutely committed to onboarding our student population in as safe way as possible, trying to create that bubble on campus and restricting their movement around town for those first couple of weeks, and making sure that testing is regular, is taking place regularly, that all students are going to be getting tested 3 times before we get started. And then on a weekly basis, we'll be random sampling them. So on average, students get tested probably 5 or 6 times over the course of the semester. If they're a non-athlete, and if they're an athlete, it can be every week. It's pretty aggressive. That's where we are now. Our wellness folks and all of our other sort of frontline staff are either in the process of getting the first vaccine or have gotten it. And so we are, following the guidelines set out by the state in terms of the 1A population. And as you all may know, the 1B population begins, I think registration for that begins on Friday. And so some of our older faculty and staff certainly will want to take advantage of that opportunity. So let me pause there. I can take any questions you may have. One last thing, we'll also be publishing all our data as we did in the fall on our website. So if you have questions about the numbers, the positive cases and all of that, you can take a look at that. And I guess the only other important point to mention too is we've expanded the number of rooms that we've set aside for quarantining and isolation purposes. We have concerns that with the overall count being higher, that we may have a higher positive count on our campus. And so we wanted to make sure that we were prepared for that. So we have additional space, and we also have additional staffing on our contact tracing and wellness side. There's more I could say about contact tracing and the state's role and all that, but let me pause there and see if there's any questions I can answer.
Thank you, Dr. Lesperance. That's an excellent update. Are there any members of the audience that wish to address the good doctor?
I have a question that came in from Joan O'Connor. She was wondering how many students on and off campus are expected.
I don't have a final number. We have 2 more weeks. The number is growing. I can get that information and share that with you. I can give you a sense of what the population is on opening day, if that would be helpful to the Board of Selectmen. Off campus is a little bit trickier. Off campus for us can mean anything from living in town to living in Concord or Bedford or wherever and commuting in. Oh, my screen just changed radically. So if you mean off campus in town itself, I don't know that I have a census of those students. I could give you probably a guesstimate, but it really would be a guesstimate.
Thank you. Dr. Lesperance, Is there an opportunity if someone from town wants to get tested? Could they get tested at your new facility, or is that strictly for students?
I think at this point, it's strictly for the student population and staff. And I think it has mostly to do with liability issues for the college if we were to open it up beyond that. But I can certainly inquire to see what possibilities there are.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions from, I see there's a couple of chats. Joe?
I don't see them.
I'm not seeing them either, Joe.
I'm not going to let these in. I don't think they're good ones. Okay, anybody else from the audience have any questions for the good doctor?
There is a question about what NEC might have available for facilities for an alternative form of our town meeting.
At this point, I'd be happy to talk with you all about what you would need for that. As I said, what we're trying to do is prevent folks from coming onto campus that aren't on campus living there, just to prevent that back and forth flow that can lead to spreading of COVID-19. But that said, if I could get a sense from you of what it is you're looking to have, then I can certainly talk to our facilities folks and see what we might be able to do to take one of our buildings offline to accommodate you.
So Wayne, you know how we use the ice arena for graduation and that kind of layout? Yep. With that cross flow ventilation, that might be an avenue for us to consider, especially with the 6-foot spacing.
Sure. So again, let me talk to our folks. I'm happy to work with you guys on seeing what's possible. I just don't know the answer to that question at this point, yep. But I'm happy to explore it for sure. I mean, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to try to work with you.
Thank you.
I have another question that popped up, Chairman. Are they seeing transfer students, I'm assuming enrollment going up or down?
Transfer student enrollment is actually up between fall and spring.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? All right, well, I thank you, good doctor. Appreciate the update, and we wish you good luck in getting the campus reopened. It's a huge and important part of our town, and we wish you nothing but success.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm happy to come back anytime and update you as needed. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Have a good night. Okay, next up is item number 5. We have, I believe it's Jim Roberge from the Roberge and Company doing an auditor update. Joe, do you want to do the introduction and then we'll let Jim do his thing?
Yeah, gladly. So the town of Henniker just finished their audit for the finances through December 31st, 2019. Roberge and Company has been our auditor and they're the ones who came in and did it. I've asked Jim to come in and just kind of give an update. He's going to, I'm going to let him share a screen with us. He's just going to talk about some of the financial details of the town.
Alrighty. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. I'd like to introduce myself to everyone. My name is Jim Roberge, as Joe said, from Roberge and Company. And what I'd like to do today is to give you a brief overview of the financials, because unfortunately, everything that's been more exciting up until this point than what we're going to do right now with your financials. And I'm going to attempt to share the screen so that we can all take a look at the financial statements that we're talking about at the same time. I was assuming that, all the selectmen had a copy and had a chance to at least take a look at the financial statements beforehand. And if you have any questions, usually an interactive, discussion is much more helpful and useful than me sitting here just trying to, monologue on about the financials themselves. So I'm going to right now try and attempt to share my screen so that, and Joe, are you seeing the financials now?
Nope.
You're not. Nothing yet?
No, sir.
Okay.
So if you go to share screen, if you click screen, it's going to be whatever you have up at that moment.
Okay, how about that?
Yep, there we go.
There we go. Let me try and make that fit one page. Is that better?
It actually went smaller.
Everyone seeing our table of contents now? All right, so.
Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah, you might want to make that a little bit bigger.
Okay.
A little more, good. Oh, too much. There, perfect.
All right, excellent. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to give you an overview of what your financial statements look like. If you had questions as we go through, please let me know. And then I'm going to point out some, some items that I think are important in the financials, but it's mostly just an overview so that you have an idea as to what your financial statements look like. As you can see on the table of contents, and what I like to do is generally work my way backwards on these, is the supplemental schedules at the bottom give you more detail about all of the funds that the town maintains. From there, if you work your way back up, then you get to some budgetary information that gives you your general fund budget versus actual numbers. You work your way up through the footnotes, and then you get yourself to what we call your fund-based financial statements, which provide you information on your general fund and your other major funds. And in your case, that's just your common trust funds and your general fund. All of the others are aggregated in what we call non-major fund category. And then after that, there's another set of financials that's called your government-wide financial statements. And it takes everything, all of your funds, smashes them all together, adds your capital assets and your long-term debt to it, and they call those government-wide financials. They give an overall picture of what the town looks like, but it's hard to decipher individual fund information in those government-wide financials. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch to the auditor's opinion. All right, and what we have here is this is the only piece within this entire set of financial statements that is actually ours as the auditor. And by us providing this opinion, we actually, join forces in indicating that your financial statements are representative of what you've presented. So in here, you can see that the management's responsibility is that it's your responsibility to prepare these financial statements. And although as auditors, we assist in that preparation, Russ has been designated as your individual at the town that oversees that process of preparing the financial statements. And I actually review these with him so that he knows where all of the numbers come from, and they come from your system. So he knows where they all come from. Our responsibility as auditors is just to simply present or express an opinion on those financial statements. And that's what the independent auditors here indicates. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit. The auditor's opinion down in the bottom here. In your case, our audit opinion is that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, which means that's a clean opinion. And there's nothing that we found here that you need to be aware of. I'm going to switch again now to the second piece. That I wanted to address. All right, so as we indicated earlier, I like to work our way backwards in these financials. So this is the back section of your financial statements, which is called your combining non-major financial statements. And back here, you can see the detail for all of the funds that you maintain. It's something that probably looks familiar to you and that you have a good understanding of where these things come from. It shows you what your library fund is made up of, your water sewer fund, conservation, rec revolving, and your drug forfeiture. And these are what we call non-major funds, and it's a quantitative calculation, the determination between major and non-major. But back here you can see the detail on all of your individual funds that the town maintains, except for your general fund and your other major funds. Switch pages again here. And we're going to move forward in your financials. to your budgetary comparison schedule. This here gives you a snapshot on a budgetary basis of what happened in your general fund during the year. The first page gives you your original budget and your final budget for all of your estimated revenues and how you did on an actual basis. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you can see that your actual inflows were $782,000 in excess of what your estimates were. However, most of that is your unassigned fund balance that you had available. So other than your fund balance, you were actually under your estimates and your revenues for the year. Next page after that is a comparison of your appropriations, your budgeted expenditures and versus what you actually expended. And you look at the bottom here and we actually overexpended by $809,000. And some of that is probably related to capital reserve expenditures, which we don't add to the budget piece on this. So, you know, some of those over expenditures are capital reserve type expenditures, or possibly you received some additional funding during the year that was used to support those expenditures. Moving forward. Notes to the basic financial statements. I'm not going to review any of the information in here, but there's a section in here that just simply provides all of your financial accounting policies that you use in order to prepare these financial statements. And again, I'm sorry for the delays here, but this was new to me, trying to share the screen with your financials, but I think it's going to be helpful for you all. All righty. Moving up front, this is called your fund-based financial statements. As you can see, here's where your general fund is. First page is your balance sheet, shows you what all of your assets were, and also what your liabilities were for your general fund and your other major fund, which in this case is your common trust funds, in which you have a significant balance, you know, almost $5 million in common trust funds. But if you take a look at your general fund, you primarily have, you know, significant cash at the end of the year. You also have some property taxes that are still receivable and outstanding. For liabilities, you have monies that are due to other governments, which is primarily your school district assessments, because the schools are on a fiscal basis and you're on a calendar. You're collecting money for their July 1 to June 30th of the subsequent year. So you have, you know, almost $4 million that's still owed to the schools. And that's probably why you have such a significant cash reserve at this point, because you've collected your property taxes and they're still due to the school through June 30th. Down bottom in your fund balance section, if you look at your fund balance, it's broken up into different categories or restrictions. The committed fund balance is primarily your capital reserves that you have available. And there was a new GASB accounting standard a number of years ago that required us to take and combine your capital reserves within your general fund for financial reporting purposes. We used to show them in a separate column so you could see your capital reserves all by themselves, but now they're just shown in your fund balance as a committed fund balance. So that basically represents your capital reserves. Your assigned numbers are encumbrances or continuing appropriations, spending authority that you're going to carry forward to the subsequent year. And your unassigned fund balance, in this case, you know, $1.3 million is what you have available to use to offset taxes in the subsequent period if you would like. You have the discretion of using whatever portion of that you'd like to, but you do have a significant fund balance that's available for your use if you want to. Just going to switch a couple of pages. The other revenue and expenditure piece to your fund-based financial statements is on this page here. Shows what your revenues came from, what your expenditures were, and it's on a function basis or a department basis. So you can see where the change was in your fund balance. At the beginning of the year, you had 2.5 million, but that does include all of your capital reserves numbers. That's a total fund balance number on this statement of revenues and expenditures. And your fund balance actually increased by $247,000 for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. And then if we switch back up again, that $2.7 million fund balance will slide back up to your balance sheet down the bottom, and you can see what that's made up as we had just discussed earlier. The last piece of your financials up front is what we call the government-wide. And all of these financials, it's required reporting requirements that the Governmental Accounting Standard Board requires. So that's why these are all in this particular order and this particular format, because they're required. This statement of net position up front, as we mentioned, it's a government-wide piece. What it does is it takes your fund-based numbers that we just looked at, and it adds to them all of the long-term debt and all of the capital assets that you have that are long-term in nature. And so as you can see, if you look at your net position down bottom, the $21 million of your assets is in capital assets, and that's net of depreciation and net of any long-term debt associated with those. You have $4.8 million in permanent funds. That's your common trust funds that you have. And you actually have an unrestricted net position of $1.5 million. If you look up in the liability section, there's a description for net pension liability and for OPEB obligations. That's your share of the New Hampshire Retirement's unfunded liability, and also the New Hampshire Retirement System's medical subsidy unfunded liability. Standards require that based on your town's contribution to the New Hampshire Retirement System for the current year, you have to assume your percentage based on those contributions, your share of the liability that's unfunded for the New Hampshire Retirement System. And at the end of December 2019, your share was 3.3 million of the New Hampshire Retirement System's unfunded liability. There's also in the footnotes to the financial statements, if you have a chance sometime to peruse through them, probably 10 to 12 pages of footnotes related to the OPEB liability and to the net pension liability that you have to show in these financials. It's become a significant piece of government's financial statements now. And because New Hampshire Retirement System is a cost sharing plan, you don't want to try and fund or pay off that $3.3 million because it would just go to relieving everyone else's liability on a proportionate share basis. So although it's a number that's reflected in here, it's not a number that you actually have to pay. It's an estimate of what your share is. If the retirement system happened to make more money than they anticipated and their unfunded liability went away, then this number would go away on your financials as well. The last piece to your financials, which is the very front section up here on page 7, is what they call the management discussion and analysis. And if you were to look through this, what this does is it briefly summarizes in more of a narrative format the financial information that we just went through in your government-wide financials, your fund-based financials, and your budgetary-based comparison that's way out in the back. And it's a required piece to your financial statements. There are certain required components that are in here, and they're all based on accounting standards, so that we have to include those in your financial statements. And if you wanted to take a look and read through those at some point, it's very interesting reading, especially if you have insomnia. You can go through and it'll work really well. So that is what I have for information in your financials. Your audit opinion is a clean opinion. Russ has done a very good job of keeping track of your financial information over the years. And we haven't found any weaknesses in your internal control system. There was also communication that went to you along with these financial statements that described our relationship. And in there, we would indicate if we identified any weaknesses in your systems, which we have not identified. At this point, if you have any questions on the financials, if you had a chance to look through them, I'd be glad to take any questions and hopefully answer your questions if I can.
Great, thank you. Tia.
Jim, how long has your firm represented us or been our auditor?
I don't know the exact number of years, but it's been 15 to 20 years.
And what is the recommended time frame of when a town or any entity would be looking to potentially swap over, just to make sure that there's somebody else looking at the books?
Yep, that's completely up to you as to what you would like to do. What we found is that we've had long-term relationships with a lot of our clients because our staff is small and you see the same people every year. So, some would say that's good. Some would say that's bad, that you become comfortable with us. We try to switch up our procedures and what we look at every once in a while so that it's not, Russ doesn't have an idea as to what we're looking at every time we get there. But it's completely up to you as to, if you would like to switch auditors, if you would like to look and see what else is out there.
Great, thank you. Peter. You're muted, Peter.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We got you.
I wanted to ask about the, I got 3 numbers down here. I jotted down for fund balance, and the last one you talked about, which was available for tax offsetting and so forth. Was that 12 something or 13? I didn't write it down. If you know, without too much.
Your unassigned fund balance that you had available was 1.3 million.
That's what I wrote down. Okay.
At the end of 19.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I need to know.
And Leon.
One thing that I noticed when I went through the report, you were somewhere, and I had it in the report, and I don't have it in front of me. You were anticipating that the bond we're asking for was going to be split 70-30, and what we're anticipating is 60-40.
I'm assuming that you're looking at the management discussion and analysis.
I think so.
Okay.
I think that's where it was.
And that would be something that Russ or Joe, I'm not sure if Joe was involved in that process of preparing that piece. But that's something that comes directly from management, and that's why it's called a management's discussion and analysis.
Yeah, understand.
So I don't have, any say or any anticipation of what it's going to be.
We probably won't either.
Yeah. And I do know that you do have some 60-40 splits in some of your existing debt that you have for water and sewer.
Great, thank you.
Well,
Jim, I am a numbers geek, so I actually viewed your presentation with mild enthusiasm. I mean, it is an accounting spreadsheet.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear.
Could you just give me the Cliff Notes version again on the liabilities regarding the pensions?
Okay.
One, you had a $450,000 number and you had a 3.3 million.
Yes.
So, could you give me what those numbers actually represent again? I have it in my mind as what they represent, but I want to confirm it.
Let's go through the big one first. The big one is the easier one of the two. That's your share of the New Hampshire Retirement System's net pension liability.
So that's Henniker's portion when they say that the state pension is underfunded by 1.5 billion.
Correct. That's Henniker's portion, and that's calculated based on your contribution to the system for that particular year. So you take your contribution, figure out what your percentage of all contributions to the entire system are for the year, and they simply allocate that net pension liability, their unfunded liability, to the town of Henniker. Your piece is 3.3 million.
Got it.
And I believe at the time that they originally started doing this, the system was about $4.5 billion underfunded at that point. And I'm not sure where they stand at this point.
Okay. And then the smaller of the two numbers.
The smaller of the other two is what we call other post-employment benefits. And it's actually made up of two different pieces. Every year you have an actuarial determination of what your implicit rate subsidy is. And the second piece is your share of the New Hampshire Retirement's medical subsidy. Same thing as the unfunded pension liability. It's just the medical subsidy piece that the New Hampshire Retirement System decided to pay a while ago when they were actually making money. So that's calculated the same way. The medical subsidy portion of the New Hampshire Retirement System, it's your contributions to the system for that year based on overall contributions. The implicit rate subsidy is a different one. That one there is the GASB in their wisdom, and I don't agree with the standard itself, but the GASB in their wisdom said that because your insurance, your health insurance premiums are a blended premium, meaning you have all of your active members and your retired members included in the pool that they create their premium from. If you had done an age-adjusted premium and you had done separate premiums for your active members and your retirees, your active members' premiums would be a lot lower. So therefore, you're actually subsidizing the active members' health insurance through a higher premium because it's a blended rate. And the GASB said you need to have an actuarial determination done to project what that cost is going to be into the future for you. And you have to report that as a liability on your financial statements. There is no liability. If you were to cease operations tomorrow, you've paid your premiums, all of your employees have received their health insurance, and there is no liability. So that's the piece that I have a hard time with, is that they forced us to put that on your financials as a liability, and there really isn't one. If you had an explicit plan where the town had voted to pay for the health insurance for retirees, then there would be a liability there. And that would be an explicit plan. But your plan is simply an implicit plan. It's just the difference between the premiums because you have a blended premium for active and retirees. I'm not sure if that explained it well, but
I actually did follow it. Yeah, okay. So let me ask you this: of all the towns that you've looked at and you do auditing for, I'm not sure if this is your specialty or anything like that. Have you ever seen any towns exit from the pension system with the state successfully?
No, I have not. And we only do municipalities. We do school districts and towns in New Hampshire, and that's it. And I have never seen anybody exit. It is, however, something that all of the towns and school districts in New Hampshire should be concerned with, because if the state of New Hampshire, which is the largest member of the New Hampshire Retirement System, was, let's say, to pull out their corrections officers and contract that out, there would be a huge suction of contributions from the system, which would increase all of your rates because it's a defined contribution cost sharing plan. Defined benefit cost sharing plan. So those costs would be shared amongst all the other members. So if someone big like the New Hampshire the state of New Hampshire pulled a portion out of that system, it would have a tremendous effect on all the smaller municipalities in New Hampshire.
Got it. I don't want to belabor the point, but the only last question I got on it, is that a growing liability, declining liability, or flat liability?
I believe I'd have to look at the most recent New Hampshire Retirement System audit report to see what their net pension liability is. It was $4.5 billion a couple of years ago. I'm not sure what it is now. I'm assuming it has actually gone down a little bit. I know that the medical subsidy piece is going down because they actually stopped offering that to retirees after a certain date. So the pool of individuals that are receiving the medical subsidy is actually declining all the time. So that liability is decreasing for sure.
Great, thank you. Peter.
Yes, Mr. Roberge, how are you tonight?
Good, thank you.
I would like to ask a question, and it's probably not germane to the situation in Henniker, but do you represent any town that is not part of the New Hampshire Retirement System outside of the police and fire department? and probably have a substitute for that in the such as a 457 plan? And how does that affect what you're talking about here with the retirement system?
All of the towns that we represent are members of the New Hampshire retirement system.
Okay.
Some, however, do also offer other 457 plans to their employees, in addition to the New Hampshire retirement system.
Yeah.
But that's the only case where it's anything different. You know, they're all members of the New Hampshire retirement system.
Thank you.
All right, great. Any other questions from the board? All right, we have an accounting. Thank you, Mr. Roberge. It was appreciated that you came here tonight.
You're welcome very much. And if anyone has any additional questions at any time, feel free to, you know, get in touch with me, reach out to Joe. He's got my email, or give me a call. I'll be glad to answer any questions at any time throughout the year.
And you're more than welcome to stick around. We have a double header of accounting. We're going right into our budget advisory committee. So
excellent.
In case you want to pop some popcorn and get part of that one too. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. All right. So with that for an introduction, we are actually going into a budget advisory committee recommendation. And Joe, I see a couple members from the committee out there in Zoom land. I don't know if Jared or Dan Butler is going to be speaking on this. Jared's got his video off, so maybe we should pick on him a little bit. But no, we'll go to Dan, I guess. Joe, you want to do the introduction on who's going to speak on this?
Yeah, so I've unmuted the members. We have Dan Butler, Jared Gleason, Heidi Aucoin, and Lori Marco here from the Budget Advisory Committee. And they're going to be giving their recommendations to the board after reviewing the budget.
Very good. I'm only picking on Jared because your wife said to pick on you tonight, so I'm sorry.
That was very nice of her.
All right, go ahead, guys.
Well, good evening, everyone. So let's see. This year's Budget Advisory Committee has just about 6 recommendations this year. The first is we would recommend a cut to the library's overall budget of $14,000. And we would like to request that in the future, the library provide more of their financial and operational records from their trustees' accounts to the Budget Advisory Committee in the binder in years going forward. The second is in regards to White Birch Community Center, considering that they were able to return some of last year's gift and that there's going to be restrictions on the services they can provide this year due to COVID-19. We recommend reducing our donation to them to $50,000. It is the committee's recommendation that the Beautification Alliance donation goes down from $14,915 to $2,500, and for that amount to be moved into the solid waste department's line items for flowers and mulch. The committee also recommends reducing the historic district line item 615 by $250. And the committee recommends eliminating all unnecessary paid minute takers.
What was that last one again?
The committee recommends eliminating all unnecessary paid minute.
Joe, do we have a legal responsibility to prepare minutes for meetings?
So we have the ability, and if we wanted to, we could have a committee member, have a secretary that is taking the minutes for that committee and then submitting them to town hall to be posted, and just like we do now with a minute taker.
Yeah, the only independent ones that would definitely need or require a paid minute taker are the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, and ZBA.
Joe, do you have any idea of the fiscal impact of that recommendation regarding minute taking?
I don't. I can go through and have it for the next meeting for you, though.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else, Dan?
Nope, that was all we had this year, guys.
Okay. By my rough down and dirty math, that is the equivalent of about 80,000. Do I have that more or less in the ballpark?
Yes, sir, that matches.
We didn't have enough.
Are there questions from the board for the Budget Advisory Committee?
I don't know so much questions, but I know as a first timer on the budget committee that some of the information given to us to make decisions on was not as complete as it could have been.
Can you be specific, Heidi?
Well, when we first met, we didn't have any projection to end of year or what money was still encumbered. We have no information on what departments tend to have an overage year to year to year, which I think is true of some of our departments. And when they do, how that money's spent, because that gives you a better overall idea where you can make cuts. I just, as a first timer, feel like more information would have been more helpful to us to give you better recommendations.
Okay, appreciate the feedback. Further questions from either the committee or the board?
I'd like to ask Heidi if I should put it this way: was the presentation meeting? I think we had one meeting with department heads and so forth. Not enough that evening when they presented their budgets. Was there a lack of information that you think you should have had at that time too?
I will admit I came on board after that meeting, so I was part of that. Yeah. But I still think that there could have been more information in our booklet or our large binder to be able to make better assumptions about how the year ends. I'm a business owner and I meet with my accountant in September, and there's projections made to the end of the year of what my income and expenses might be. And some of those figures in our book neither told us, even at the end of the year, whether any of those leftover funds were still owed in places. So it didn't give us a good picture of what's really left and what happens to what's left, or what the history is to departments that continually have extra money each year. And I think that would give us better information to really recommend to you maybe where cuts could be made.
Okay.
Okay. Fair points. Thank you very much, Heidi. Other questions? Lori, how'd you find the process?
I agreed with Heidi. I thought it would have been nice also to have past history, like a 2 or 3 years would have been nice to have to see what the trends are or were. So I completely agree with Heidi. We had talked about this and agreed that we needed to see more history, more transparency, and so that we could have an idea of not that you try to be careful, you know, you don't want to tick anybody off, you know, but just trying to be transparent. You know,
you gotta wear tough underwear around here.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
The consensus a lot this year was a lot of the information that's on chapter 3 in the binder. You see, on every chapter we get a lot of information about what was approved the last 2 years and what's requested this year. And in the presentations, we get a lot of information about what projects the department heads have planned going forward for the next year. But in chapter 3 of the binder, we see a list of how much of the approved budget year after year to figure out this year was more on which line items had overages, which line items didn't really have enough, what happened to extra money if some money was approved but not spent. And if money was approved but not spent, then do we need to increase the budget this year, even if it's requested?
Okay.
Yep.
Fair points, Dan. Thank you. Questions? Further questions? Jared, I would be remiss if I didn't pick on you a little bit more. So what?
You didn't let us in on the fact that we should pick on him.
I know,
right?
Well, hey, I just got whispered in my ear on the way out today.
I agree with what everyone else said. Just that, you know, I come from a finance background, so obviously the more information that's available, the better. And just repeating what Dan said, like there was a lot provided on what had been approved in previous years, but not what had been used. And I know personally with my company, I'm sure other companies did as well. We took this year to kind of find what the fluff was in budgets, you know, to see where when you pare things down to obviously, you know, a company a little bit different than a town, but you can see where maybe there was extra money that was budgeted that wasn't really necessary, but it just been considered as a year-over-year assumption of what was needed. And it was hard to make that same assumption without a little more detail on what was actually spent this year as opposed to previous years, and not just what was budgeted for each.
No, very valid point there. Joe, are you taking a little Cliff Notes version of these recommendations?
I have them all written down, sir.
Great, thank you. Further questions, select board and/or committee?
Is there a way that we could maybe get the information a little, I don't know, a little bit sooner so we have a little more time to look at it before we have the budget review? I don't know what the timing is. Being new on this, I don't know what your time frames are and how soon you can get all this together.
Sure, it's a fine line that we're walking. We want to be as far along in the year as possible. We want to have the opportunity for the department heads to create their budgets, and then also for the dollars and cents, if you will, to trickle down through the colander to end up in the line item. So, Joe, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an idea, we had the budget here, our budget meeting on, it was the second week of November, I believe.
Right.
Our budgets were due the last week of October. So I mean, we literally had them due, and then we were turning around those binders, and we tried to get them out enough so people could look at them ahead of time as well. And you know, when we're producing all those papers, it does take a little bit of time because, you know, unfortunately, I'll plug a financial software package again, but you know, we don't have a system where, you know, a department head can go in and electronically put it in and it gets submitted to our finance department like some software packages and things would have. You know, they're doing it on paper or they're doing it in Excel, and then they're sending it to our finance department, and the finance department is manually inputting everything. And so that's the process we have to take. So it does take a little bit longer. And, you know, as far as past histories, I was listening, again, I was taking some of the notes. I did try to get you guys the most updated expense report, essentially. So I think it was December 30th was the last one, which the board also got. Just to give an idea. You know, any money that's left over by the end of the year, all of it goes to the fund balance, unless the board directs it to go somewhere else. That's typically where it's going to go. And as far as the encumbrance goes, Russ, actually, I'm hopeful at the next Board of Selectors meeting, they're going to be getting a list, the board will, of the encumbrances so that they can approve them for this year. So that's kind of where we're sitting, and I don't have that dollar figure. But that's the process where we're trying to move it as fast as we can, but as late as we can in order just to make things happen. Ideally, you know, we will look at this year as an example, you know, the way things happen, and we had to add an extra meeting for the board to even look at the budget before the public hearing. You know, I'd like to be even further ahead, meaning in the beginning of January, so we're not adding meetings in to start reviewing stuff, or to give them more than one look at it, which unfortunately that's all they're getting before we have this public hearing. I'd like to be able to get it on the agenda a couple times. So if I had my way, I'd be pushing things even more forward just to give that opportunity.
Great, thank you, Joe. Appreciate the explanation.
Just to clarify, the end of year report that we all did get, that did not include the encumbered funds, correct?
That is correct. That report that you saw shows you, because the board hasn't approved any encumbered funds yet. So that report that you saw shows what's left in every single line, essentially.
So I guess it goes back to, as a budget committee, it does not give us a whole picture. Right. And without a whole picture, it's really hard for us to give you good objective opinions of what maybe should be cut or not cut, because we don't know. It could say there's $50,000 left and 45,000 of it could be encumbered. If we don't know that, we just think there's 50,000 left in that budget. So it's really hard to give you objective advice outside of your board without that information. It's incomplete, I guess. It's incomplete. I can't.
No, that's fair. That's fair, Heidi. Thank you. Okay. Any final comments?
I actually have one thing. In the future, if this financial package doesn't happen, would it be possible to get this data in an Excel for those of us that might like to analyze further, as it were, as opposed to just putting stuff on paper?
Thank you.
I'd also just like to say a thank you to Joe and to Tia for all the help you guys were able to provide the committee this year.
Yes, agreed.
Welcome, guys.
Great. All right. Well, not hearing any more commentary, I think I can speak for all the select board when we want to thank the Budget Advisory Committee for doing a fantastic job of coming together with a few meetings and or more than a few meetings, but coming to us with some recommendations. Fully encourage you to participate next week in the budget meeting that we're going to be occurring, and we'll take it from there. So thank you very much for your time. All right. Actually, we got a triple header in accounting tonight. So first we go from an auditor, then we go to the Budget Advisory Committee, and last but certainly not least, we have Tia Hooper with the capital improvement presentation. So Tia, are you all in on the technology side right now? Are you good to go?
Can you see the screen? PowerPoint.
Again.
Okay, perfect.
All right, you're in charge.
So also on the call are committee members Bill Marco, Leon Parker, and I don't believe I saw Rocky call in for this evening, but he was also part of the committee this year. So we're going to give you a rundown of a couple of items before we get into the requests and recommendations that came before us for this year's planning purposes. So what is the CIP? The CIP is a long-range planning document that outlines the anticipated expenditures for capital projects and equipment over at least 6-year period and is aimed at increasing the capacity of the town's infrastructure to accommodate our future growth and development. It also helps us avoid undue property tax increases, supports economic development, and provides a foundation for growth management and impact fees. It's a really valuable part of our community planning process as it links those local infrastructure investments with not only our master plan goals, but land use ordinances and the economic development strategic plans that we've already started to put in place. And it also bridges the gap between planning, spending, and between visions that we might have and the fiscal realities that we're actually facing when we start to look at improving and expanding our community facility as well. Also developing a plan for the distribution of capital costs to reduce that undue tax increase. So about the Town of Henniker CIP committee. So the committee was originally formed back in the early 2000s and was dissolved as the plan became disregarded by the Board of Selectmen during the 2005 to 2014 time period. In 2014, the board finally began to return some of the capital reserve funding slowly, but it had no real updated plan to meet the long-term strategic needs of our community. So in 2019, the CIP committee was reformed by the Henniker Planning Board under RSA 674 5 through 8. This year's committee members included myself, Bill Marco, Heidi Aucoin, Rocky Bostrom, and Leon Parker. And In 2019, our committee began its work with all town departments to reassess and develop the town's portion of the CIP plan. Last year, we created the vehicle and equipment inventory, which has been updated for this year's report. And we also created the process and procedure to be used moving forward for town departments, committees, boards, and any other entity that may request capital dollars moving forward. And from there, we started to utilize the information to calculate out the long-term funding strategy so we could fund our infrastructure needs and recommend a timeline for purchases and project implementations. The long-range planning goal continues to be coordinating and unifying the strategic goals and needs of our community across town departments, the boards, and the different entities, and to identify, review, and prioritize those goals on an annual basis for at least 6 years into the future. We've actually gone out to 2049 with some of the stuff that we know about at this point. And then to review and analyze the planning decisions and mechanisms for those so we can start making recommendations on those improvement needs and coordinate the between existing committees, departments, and budgets or other funding mechanisms. As part of our plan, we did develop it in accordance with the RSA provisions, and we are here to provide you with our detailed report, which has been unanimously approved by the planning board, and that was approved on January 13th of this year. So what is a CIP project? So it's a non-often reoccurring expenditure that costs at least $5,000 before any external funding, and it has an expected life of at least 5 years. Expenditures can fall into acquisitions, lease of land, or land for public purposes. And then to address the goals of the growth of the community, it could be to purchase, lease, construction, or replacement of a building, physical facility, any of our public infrastructure, or any of the equipment that we use within our departments. Items that are not subject to CIP include those that are needed for immediate compliance with state and federal law or court order. The costs or obligations to conduct or prepare surveys and studies on items that were in the previous slide that are under the 5,000, and then routine and reoccurring expenses, which we normally see in our operating budgets. If the cost is at least 5,000 and the duration exceeds 1 budget year, at that time it needs to be reviewed to see if it's going to be kicked over into a CIP project. In the 2019 establishment of our process, we created a new way for things to be submitted. So we worked with department heads and we notified them and other town bodies that our review has begun, and they are sent a CIP project request form. And those entities are also notified to begin their annual vehicle and equipment inventory updates. We receive all that information back, and then we review each of those requests thoroughly. From there, we use the classification system, which you can see on the screen, to evaluate each one of the projects and classify the projects within one of the rankings that are appearing. Class 1 is the highest level of priority, while class 5 and 6 are the lowest. Items that are actually approved in the CIP by the planning board that go beyond the current budget year are not binding within the CIP, and they must be resubmitted by the departments each year for approval. So in Appendix E, you'll actually find the updated vehicle equipment inventory of all town vehicles and equipment broken out by department. The inventory records show the type of equipment, the condition, the expense of repairs above and beyond the routine maintenance costs. And it allows department heads to comment on the condition of their vehicles and equipment and provide notes on the performance and mechanical issues that they're experiencing or that are being noticed. These notes really help us assess the status of the vehicle and if needed, we then can circle back to the department heads about their equipment and the issues that are being experienced to determine the best course of action. In Appendix A through C, these include the CIP committee's CIP matrix, projects and equipment that are managed on the matrix, outlines the cost of anticipated vehicles and equipment, and other projects that have been identified. It shows the anticipated expense based on the years that the piece of equipment may need to be replaced, or when a building may need to be repaired, or potentially new construction. So the matrix has been established from 2020 through 2049 and has been updated this year after a thorough review. So Appendix A, once again, you have the vehicle equipment schedule, shows your estimated timeline of expenses, which starts on page 34 of the report. Appendix B is our CIP fund flow. It shows you the recommended dollars for CIP allocation at town meeting, the expenditures if it's scheduled for the purchase, and the total balance at year end projected, which starts on page 46. And then the CIP tax impact comparison, which shows the recommended capital improvement funding levels for each reserve each year, and how that actually impacts the tax rate year to year. And then we also have, in comparison, what it would do if we did not adopt CIP, and what that would do to your tax rate and the high level of fluctuation. And that starts on page 50. So this year during the department, the review process, we worked with the department heads again for their CIP funding requests. We updated the vehicle equipment inventories, updated the matrix, and with the town meeting appropriations from July. We also updated the estimated valuations and reviewed the capital reserve trust long-term balances with the anticipated capital expenditures. So through the review of these long-term balances, we found that based on the 2020 appropriations, that some of the capital reserves and expendable trusts were once again inadequately funded to meet the basic operational and service needs within our community. The largest shortfall was within the Highway Department Equipment Capital Reserve. In 2019, the CIP report recommended $100,000 funding level. The Board of Selectmen, during their budget deliberations, funding was cut to $25,000 and was approved at town meeting. The reduction has resulted in a CIP reserve balance of only $29,000 when it is recommended for a new truck purchase needed this year for over $200,000. This allocation has also created a shortfall in the long-term funding strategy to guaranteed funds that would be available for equipment that is needed. So CIP, to address this situation, we reevaluated and restructured the schedule of all capital expenses, reviewed all of the equipment inventories across all departments, and moved out vehicle and equipment replacement timelines and made those modifications across all departments. CIP committee stresses to all departments and municipal entities that equipment and projects appearing on the CIP is not a guarantee and should not be purchased or started just because funds are available. Routine and preventative maintenance plans should be developed and carried out to preserve and extend the life of equipment and vehicles, and to keep vehicles and equipment operating at the highest levels possible. Projects should be reviewed and fully analyzed prior to commencement to make sure that the project is a priority, meets the needs of our community, and does not conflict with other priorities. After initial review of our vehicle replacement timelines, the committee reviewed the annual allocations needed to adequately support the capital reserve, to support the basic life safety needs of our community, and in order to reduce the large yearly fluctuation in capital spending and impact on our overall tax rate. So as part of this process, we had discussions with Fire Chief Jim Morse and discussions with Highway Superintendent Leo Aucoin. For the fire department, through that discussion, we're scheduling vehicles out longer than the 25 years reflected in the 2019 report. And the fire chief, after review of the funding balances, supported the reduction in allocations made to the fire department capital reserve over the next 5 years to get the highway reserve established, which you can see in the report that's been provided to you. The highway department vehicles have also been reviewed, and vehicles have also been pushed out longer than the original timeline after 2023. As part of this process, we are obligated to also bring into the school district into this plan. We did meet with the school board and presented the CIP purpose to them. We received copies of their current documents prepared by the Henniker School Board. And we also met with Zach Lawson and Chris Roy from the SAU. After review of those school preliminary documents, they are definitely in a preliminary phase of development and need to be further developed and refined to meet the CIP definitions. So the committee will begin to work with the school district after the 2021 budget preparations for incorporation into our 2022 CIP reports. As part of our review, we also had a long discussion about bonding of capital projects. One mechanism the committee would like to avoid is bonding of future expenses. The funding mechanism should be utilized sparingly and only when large-scale projects identified as priorities are not able to be fully funded by the capital reserve appropriations. So under the Municipal Finance Act, it establishes the limit of bonded indebtedness that we can take on. And for municipal expenditures, that's only 3% of our equalized evaluation. So currently we have approximately $300,000 in debt service. Some debt service will come off the books, but we have to keep in mind that this year, we have the wastewater bond. We also have in 2027, a potential construction of a new police facility. And then 2040, that we have that $40 million question mark with the wastewater facility upgrade. So due to the lack of funding currently available to municipalities for wastewater upgrades, all bonding should be limited so that bonds can be used for these large scale priorities, just in case they cannot be fully funded through CIP planning or for potential emergency repairs that the town may incur not covered by insurance. Just to give you, again, the structure of how we have evaluated the projects that were submitted to us. These are once again your class 1 through 6, which are also provided in your book. And this year for our committee recommendations, which begin on page 20, if you would like to follow along. So for the Henniker Fire Department, they have requested the replacement of 2006 extrication tools. We have deemed this project necessary. This was reviewed by the committee and found as a necessary request. They use the tools to extricate individuals from vehicles during accidents, and they only have one set of these tools within the department. The CIP fund does have adequate amounts of funds for this request, and due to timing, CIP supports this request. So we're recommending that $42,000 be appropriated for the purchase of these extrication tools, with the $42,000 coming from the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Also for the Henniker Fire Department, funding of the Capital Reserve, the CIP committee, based on the anticipated expenses to maintain the equipment utilized by the fire department, recommends the Capital Reserve Fund appropriation of $50,000. Once again, equipment should be evaluated on an annual basis, and the department should be maintaining the equipment to lengthen the life of the equipment. So the recommended warrant article will be to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. And this is as discussed with Chief Jim Morris. Henniker Rescue, CIP committee, similar to previous years, looking at $70,000 appropriation, and there's a typo there. The amount of $60,000 will be transferred if received from the town of Bradford into the capital reserve, and only $10,000 would be raised by taxation. in that one. For the Henniker Highway Department, there was a request to purchase a new 10-wheeler dump truck. The CIP committee reviewed this request and determined it as necessary. This would be to replace it with a 14-foot Tenco type multi-purpose body with complete plow package to replace the 2006 yellow Freightliner as a frontline vehicle. And this is actually going to be serving as a tanker during the summer months with the option to remount the sander for plow operation during the winter months. The tank utilized would come off the current 1989 tanker being used by the Highway Department. So this one would be $200,000 for the purchase of the 10-wheeler and Tenco type multi-purpose body, with $150,000 coming from unreserved fund balance and $50,000 coming from taxation. Funding of the highway equipment capital reserve. I kind of briefly explained to you why we had a shortfall, and after review and lengthy discussion, the committee is recommending that $150,000 be put into the highway equipment capital reserve to fund adequately their capital reserve for future replacement of vehicles and equipment vital to road construction and plowing operation. The appropriation will lower and stabilize future tax rates once the capital reserve is adequately funded over the next few years. And schedule of that proposed allocation is outlined in Appendix B. So once again, recommended warrant article is to raise and appropriate the sum of $150,000 to be added to the highway equipment capital reserve fund. Henniker Transfer Station, we had numerous requests. One was for a replacement of a skid steer. This was reviewed. CIP has ranked it as premature and not in support of community goals at this time. Every effort should be made to repair the skid steer by the transfer station, and routine preventative equipment maintenance schedule should be developed and implemented. We also had a request to replace the Ford 900 fire truck with a pickup truck. Once again, CIP has determined that this is premature and not supported in community goals. Request to fund the transfer station building repairs. We also had a request for this. We have marked it as deferrable and not in support of community goals. The committee reviewed the request and confirmed with the town administrator that the transfer station budget currently has $6,000 in the operating budget for maintenance, and the transfer station building has $3,500 in the operating budget for maintenance for the recycling building. Based on this, the funds being allocated in the operating budget for maintenance of these buildings, the committee determined that those funds should be utilized to take steps to replace some of the exterior sheeting and replace the electric door and side swinging doors that were identified in the project proposal. Henniker Parks and Recreation, we received a request to purchase a new lawn tractor, once again identified as premature. The request was submitted to replace a Toro riding lawnmower. The justification submitted was based on the age of the equipment and the cost of investing in equipment repairs. The committee reviewed this request in the Parks Department equipment inventory and found that there are currently 4 mowers listed on the Parks Department inventory. Funding of the Parks Equipment Expendable Trust. CIP committee continues to support the allocation of the funds for future equipment replacement and recommends $2,500 within the FY 2021 budget. For the Henniker Police Department, once again, to put in or allocate funds into their equipment expendable trust for MBTs and weapons that were also provided to us at no cost. We're recommending $10,000 be placed into the Police Department Equipment Expendable Trust. Funding of the police department, new building. The CIP in their 2020 review continues to agree with the plan to purchase land and construct a new facility for the men and women serving our community as members of the Henniker Police Department. After review, we recommend that $100,000 be once again put into the maintenance fund for the anticipated construction, which is estimated at $4 million. Town-owned building expendable trust. Painting of the town buildings, the CIP committee once again evaluated the needs of painting in the near future, the town hall and the Grange, and recommends, continued funds be allocated towards that. The town administrator also submitted a request for mini splits for the town hall. After review, we have determined that that is premature. As we also identified that there is a need to replace a 32-year-old oil burning furnace that is the primary source of heat within the building. The committee believes that the request for the mini split is premature and that the replacement of the furnace should be the priority, and additional research on the cost of the furnace replacement with the installation of AC should be investigated. So based on this, the committee recommends $20,000 be appropriated and added to the town-owned building expendable trust fund. Town Hall Technology Expendable Trust Fund. So at the 2020 town meeting, the town voted and established the Town Technology Expendable Trust for the purpose of hardware and software upgrades, the town hall systems, and appropriated $25,000. The committee has identified this area as the #1 top priority over the next few years. The committee once again reaffirms the need and urgency to upgrade these financial and accounting software packages within the town hall to improve the efficiencies, security, and reliability of data, and increase the reporting capabilities for departments, town hall committees, Board of Selectmen whose responsibility it is to oversee the financial affairs of the town and improve payment options for residents. The financial system currently being utilized is being run on outdated, unsupported programs and is hosted on a site and sometimes backed up on external hard drives and flash drives. To ensure data reliability and security of the town hall data, the implementation of a cloud-based financial system is needed to meet the goals of bringing the town hall into the 21st century. So therefore, the committee is recommending $125,000 be added to the Town Hall Technology Expendable Trust. Road Maintenance Expendable Trust. So the CIP committee approves the recommendation for the Town Hall Road Maintenance Fund at $750 to continue the maintenance of our roadway infrastructure. The committee's recommendations has saved the town hundreds of thousands of dollars through the bundling of the work. Current balance in the Road Expendable Trust do not reflect outstanding work that has been contracted and scheduled for Western Ave, which was started in late summer of 2020. The Road Management Committee has proposed the following roadways for repaving, drainage, reconstruction, and repairs. Bennett Street, Elm Street, Depot Hill, all of Old Hills Row Road, and Circle Street. Total cost of all projects is $1.3 million. By bundling the paving, it will reduce the overall cost substantially. So this one is once again to raise and appropriate the sum of $750,000. For the revaluation capital reserve fund, we've undergone the partial revaluation and we need to prepare for the next reval that will be due soon. I know the town administrator will be coming back to us to potentially propose that we conduct partial revaluations, 20% of town each year, so that we have continuous revaluations occurring and so that they can be done thoroughly and consistently. But regardless of whatever decision is made by the Board of Selectmen, this reserve needs to be continuously funded to maintain compliance with the law. So we're recommending that $25,000 be added to the reevaluation capital reserve fund. Bridge repair capital reserve. This is, the standard warrant article that we approve every year, and this is going to be for $10,000. Wastewater. So once again, we were in support of the 60-40 split between the users and non-users of the $3.2 million expense that is to be funded. And with that, we also have a few recommendations. During our presentation with the planning board, we reminded them of the $40 million cost anticipated for the large scale water treatment facility replacement scheduled in 2040. And we recommended to them that they begin reviewing development guidelines and ordinances related to new construction and connection to water and sewer lines, and request that conversations on larger scales begin with potential developers looking to develop within areas identified for commercial and residential, located close to the existing connections for both systems in order to increase the system and number of users on it. The CIP committee recommends that the sewer commissioners review current funding allocations and look to revise billing structures to charge heavy users an increased fee based on the amount of flow coming from business, nonprofits, or commercial locations. The type of flow and chemicals used within some facilities have an increased cost associated with the maintenance of the plant and treatment of sludge being processed. On the Tucker Free Library, a request was submitted to us this year for accessibility and expansion of the facility. We reviewed and evaluated it and have classified it as premature and inconsistent with community goals. This was originally provided to us in last year's report, and the cost was $2.2 million. It was resubmitted for FY 2021 at the cost of just under $2.4 million. After initial review of the request, the committee did follow up with the director of the library to ask some additional questions regarding the request. And though that specific information and the response is located as part of the project submissions in the appendix D. After the meeting on December 28th, the town administrator was notified by the library director that this year they would not be moving forward for the project in FY 2021 and would resubmit the request for reconsideration in 2022. Are you still able to see the screen? Okay, so this is the breakdown of your vehicle expenses. So at the top, you can see the fire department with the extrication tools, and then moving out the individual vehicles going forward. And on this screen is till 2034, but it goes out further than that. Same thing with rescue, highway, and it goes down all the way through all of the different departments. In the fund flow, you can also see in the fire department capital reserve, the balance as of year end, the contributions from the warrant articles being proposed, and then the total available before the expenditures. If there's an expenditure earmarked, that's also calculated to give you your final balances. This is done also again for each one of the departments and each one of the capital reserves that have been established. When looking at the yearly impact for the capital reserves, you can see in 2021 what the impact of some of the capital reserves will do on the estimated tax rate. And this is just for the capital portion. This also does not include any revenues that might be associated. And then the appropriations proposed by CIP. So if you look at the top, you can see 271 and it jumps up and down with no consistency. And then with the estimated tax rate with the CIP plan, the first 2 years are the hardest as you get this implemented, and then it flatlines. And I will toss it over to any of my committee members who might want to jump in and add anything.
Just a comment on the road list. It's about half of the old Hillsborough Road, not all of it, that we're talking about rebuilding if we can get the money this year. And the other thing that's worth mentioning is that in our discussions with the fire chief, in some of the out years, he's talking about having a group of people in the fire department reevaluate the trucks that are proposed to be bought and going for a different kind of truck later on. So that was a long discussion with the fire chief, and I, for one, agreed with what he was talking about. And the important thing there is that we, for the short term, for the next 2 or 3 years, we have enough money in the plan to meet his requirements. And then later on down the road, we'll be looking at a much more expensive truck later on, but replacing a couple of the other ones that are on there. Heidi has her hand up.
Go ahead, Heidi.
I honestly did not put my hand up. I wasn't even touching my computer.
Leon, you lied to me.
That's all right.
Her hand is showing up on my computer.
That's funny.
All right, I saw Bill Marco's hand go up.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Tia, would you put up the fund flow again for the fire department, please? I want to point out what we did with the between the fire and highway department. The cooperation was just fantastic. If you look at the line for contributions under the fire department, it starts at 50,000, and you'll notice that gradually increases. And what they did was they allowed us to sort of shift over some of the money that they would normally get back over into the highway department, because the highway department's got a few trucks coming up. Remember, we had to buy all those trucks at the same time when the fire hit. So it took a lot of discussion, but it worked out very well, in my opinion, and everybody else's too that was involved with it. I just wanted to point that out, showing you guys the kind of the efforts behind the numbers that you're seeing on these charts. And then it goes, and then as you go ahead.
I'll jump in real quick. And so if this moves forward, you'll see a gradual decrease in the highway department allocations as we move forward to a certain point, to make sure that we can fund their upcoming purchases once we get that established.
Yeah. And then go to the estimated tax rate down farther. I can't stress this enough. That flat tax rate that you see with the CIP plans, it makes sense that you don't want to jump way up to 4s and 8s and all this other stuff, and you'd probably take some drastic measures during those years to try to cut something terrible. But if by applying these efforts, we've got ourselves a fairly flat tax rate, which is plannable. People can plan on that if they're looking forward. Businesses that might think about locating to Henniker might look at that chart right there and say, well, there's a town that's sort of got its financial affairs in order, and we could probably do business there. So there's a lot of reasons for adhering to this plan. And maybe a lesson you might have learned from last year when you didn't fully fund the highway truck, and now we've got to put it on a warrant article and see if it passes. You know, I'm not saying that you absolutely have to stick to every number in here, but a lot of study and a lot of thoughts gone into making this work for the benefit of all of us. And I hope you give it some serious consideration. That's all I had.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes.
In the book that the selectmen have, I may have missed this, but does shaded areas and not shaded areas, what does the shaded area signify? Like, for example, in the police chart.
Yep, so the police chart, those are the cruisers, right?
Yep.
So the cruisers are actually contained in their operating budget, but we want to reflect those purchases. They're not reflected in the actual totals that would hit the actual tax rate, but we want to make sure that we're documenting those for CIP purchases moving forward, since they're technically not a routine cost and technically they should be in a CIP plan.
I'm glad I asked, because I was going to ask you about the cruiser because I didn't see it in a request to be put on the CIP, and you just clarified that that's in the operating budget. Thank you.
Okay, we have Heidi raising her hand.
I think we need to also say that as a CIP committee and along with the department heads discussed at length that just because of a piece of equipment comes up in a particular year does not mean automatic replacement, that there would be an evaluation at that time as to the need and whether it could be pushed out, as well as the fact that some equipment has already been pushed out. Is that not correct, Tia?
That is correct. And we've actually pushed out the highway equipment after 2023, well past the 12-year recommended time frame of a replacement. We're looking at 14 to 15 years out on some of these pieces of equipment, which could cause serious issues if we do have truck failures.
You know, and the other piece to this is it's a pretty comprehensive report, not unlike other pieces of our town government or anyone's budget. And I think that, yes, each department plays a puzzle piece in this, but I agree with Bill Marco that the bottom line is if we do proper planning, that we can keep the tax rate rather flat. It honestly doesn't matter which department gets funded with what, as long as their expenses are covered. It's a big picture to keep that tax rate flat rather than having those highs and lows all the time just because you overfunded one department and underfunded another.
Yep, Peter.
Well, I was going to hold back on this one, but I have to say something about, it seems like the CIP committee is micromanaging the needs that the department heads have put forth. For example, I'm going to point one out, and I don't, maybe you can explain it. Yep. Joe Devine put in a request for a mini split air conditioning heating system. And the CIP committee says, oh no, you don't need that. You got to go take care of the furnace. Well, where does the CIP committee get that authority? Joe come in with a specific request. Peter, you guys should put it on the schedule.
Peter, we evaluated the request, which we are required to do. It was $32,000 for the request. Yeah. We have a 32-year-old furnace that needs to be fixed. Absolutely. When you install a new furnace, you can also include options for central AC that could be installed at a lower cost with cost savings attached. So instead of just throwing in $32,000 worth of mini splits, maybe we need to take the time when we're looking at a furnace upgrade to evaluate the overall cost and what it would cost for central AC to be installed instead.
And secondly, if you put those mini splits in that building and the furnace fails, the furnace is still your primary heat source. Those mini splits will not heat.
It's not the mini split versus, it's the process of the CIP telling the town what they have to put in.
Hang on, one at a time, one at a time.
The CIP under the RSA can only make recommendations to you. We've seen this in previous years too, where you totally ignore what CIP has to say.
Okay.
But this is what we have. This is our process.
Okay, Leon?
Without regard to the benefit of mini splits, I didn't even know what the hell a mini split was when we started this. But the process that we went through, instead of Joe having submitted something and in our infinite wisdom having said, no, we don't like it, we had a good discussion with Joe about the whole business. And I think I can, let me assume that he agreed with the plan that we came up with. And the same process took place with Leo and Jim, where they came in and we ended up, instead of our telling them what to do, we ended up with agreements about what to do. Particularly in the case of the fire chief, the discussion that I appreciated with him had to do with a couple of engine replacements out there in several years. And I totally agree with the kind of truck that he's putting together a committee to spec out.
Well, he's not.
We were very supportive of that.
Yeah, but he's not looking to spec it out. He's consulting with them because he hasn't even discussed it with the department yet.
Yeah.
So,
but
and then it has to come back to us.
It's more the process, particularly compared to others that I've seen, has been a lot more collaborative than your question would indicate. Joe can argue with me if he wants, I'll allow it.
No, I can speak for my request. I understood where the committee was coming from and I had no issues with it.
Peter, is that a hand up or is that just a
pen? No, I was just flipping my pen around. No more questions from me tonight. I have several, but I'm going to wait till next week.
Okay.
Further questions from the board? Okay. A lot to digest there, that's for sure. I want to thank the committee for bringing this forward, and looks like a lot of hard work went into it. I'm sure there's going to be agreements and disagreements moving forward, but that's what the process is all about. Any further questions before we move on? All right, not seeing anything. Thank you, everybody from the Capital Improvement Committee. Appreciate all the work. Item number 8 is CAA Technologies contract.
Get a smile out of her.
That?
That's good.
Chris?
Yeah.
I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion because my company is representing CAI and some of the work they're doing acquiring other companies.
Okay. Please note for the record that Selectman Parker is recusing himself. Kelly, thank you. So, Joe.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So for people who aren't familiar with CAI Technologies, they are the company that we use to process our GIS data and put it online, so that you can go online and look at zoning maps or look at the assessing, and it kind of puts it all into the town map for us. We've been using CAI Technologies for a couple of years now, and from everything I've heard, we're pretty happy with what they offer us, and the layers of the mapping that we have currently. So they're looking to extend our contract. The cost to extend is $2,400, which is the same amount that we paid last year. So there's no increase coming from this. And I'm looking for the board to give me authorization to sign a contract to continue with CAI for next year.
You want to make a motion on that? Scott, you're muted. Scott, you're muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few things to that. I mean, you know, CAI does a nice job, and they can give all levels of support with this. And I think what we have in Henniker is a little on the low side as far as the details that we could have with these organizations. And I think that they could provide things that might be more beneficial to a lot more people than just the planning board and our zoning administrator. You know, there's ways to bring the views right down onto the street level so you can see what the properties are all about. It also, it gives you the details on the size of the lots. It gives you more details on what zoning district they're in. It's not that I'm asking them to consider for this year, but I think it's worth considering and asking what the planning board and the zoning board would want and anybody else to see how we might want to upgrade this in the future.
Scott, doesn't it already do that? I can put on zoning overlays, and I don't know if I can get the street level.
You can, yeah, you can get the street level currently. It does give the basic zoning, but there's any number of layers we can add. I mean, you can add layers for the water and sewer connections, so you can see where our connections are set up in the town. I mean, they can really add multiple layers to whatever we're looking to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we authorize the contracting of CAI Technologies for how long was this contract? I'm not sure.
This is a yearly contract.
For the next year, for the annual contract.
Okay, I'll second that for the purpose of discussion. Further comment? Not hearing anything, we'll do a roll call vote. Chris, yes. Vice Chair Tuya?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-1 with 1 abstention and Selectman Parker. Please reflect in the minutes that Selectman Parker is rejoining the meeting. All right. Moving along to item number 9, acceptance of Board of Selectmen non-public minutes of December 1st.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Scott. Motion made by Selectman Parker. Roll call vote on the non-public of December 1st. Chris, yes. Chairman Hooper. Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Osgood.
Yes.
Mr. Flynn.
Yes.
All right. Moving along to non-public minutes of December 15th.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Selectman Hooper, seconded by Selectman Flynn. Roll call vote. Chris, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Chair Hooper, yes. Leon.
Yes.
Yes. Selectman Osgood.
Yes.
Selectman Flynn.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Approval of the non-public minutes, January 5.
Suggest a correction of the name at the end of the bottom line on page 1.
Andre Hamel?
Yep.
Yep, I got it. I'll make that change.
Okay.
Move to approve as amended.
Got it. Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve it as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Osgood. Chris, roll call, yes. Vice Chair Hooper.
Yes.
Leon.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Moving along to the public minutes of January 5 via Zoom.
Move to approve.
Motion made by Selectman Osgood. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Parker. Roll call vote. Chris, yes. Vice Chair Hooper.
Yes.
Leon Parker.
Yes.
Scott Osgood.
Yes.
Peter Flynn.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. All right. Moving along to department reports. Any questions on that? And then we'll move right along to town administrator.
6:15 to 7:15.
Not hearing anything on town department reports. Joe, floor is yours.
Great. So just quick COVID-19 update for everybody. As of January 13th, the town had 13 active cases, which is 0.26% of our population. We had 16 new cases in the past 14 days and a total of 138 cumulative cases so far, which is 2.77% of our population. We've had 3,243 people tested, which is 65% of the population, and our positivity rate was 7.3%. I just want to remind everybody that the filing period for town elections opens up tomorrow and runs through 5 p.m. on January 29th. The open positions is we have 2 select board positions for 3-year terms. We have 2 planning board members for 3-year terms, 1 water commissioner, 1 trustee of the trust fund, 2 Tucker Free Library trustees, 1 supervisor of the checklist, 1 town treasurer, and 1 cemetery trustee. The Craney Hill Emergency Communications Tower. This is something we haven't spoken about in quite some time. Wanted to give a quick update. We have been having discussions with Homeland Security Representative Julia Chase from the state of New Hampshire. In the beginning, we thought we're only going to be able to access grant money for the generator piece of the project, meaning the rest of the project would have to be funded by the town. On January 13th, though, I did receive news from Homeland Security that they're willing to consider a complete tower project. So we have a meeting on Thursday with Julia Chase, along with Steph Costello, Chief Morris, Chief French, Superintendent Coyne, and myself, to start the discussion on this application so we can get this moving forward for the town. Azalea Park. So I had the opportunity to speak to Selectman Osgood and Susan Adams from the Azalea Park Committee. We have some concerns about erosion on a pathway along the park. And the erosion, I should say, is being caused by human use. It's not being caused by the river. The concern I have is the town could have some liability that we need to address when it comes to this. So where the erosion is happening along this walking path, we obviously would hate for somebody in the dark or in the evening to fall and possibly fall into the river. I have asked the highway superintendent to go over and just take a look at it just to get an idea of what we're looking at. Whether we should possibly maybe put up a temporary fence just to ensure that people are safe, or put up Jersey barriers. When the highway superintendent did go over and look at it, he did give a couple ideas. One of them is adding 6-inch erosion stone along the embankment with some hard pack 3/4-inch crushed stone as well. I will say, I presented this to the Azalea Park Committee so they have this information. I don't think this would be the prettiest fix, shall we say. I know that they were looking at some other type of stuff. But this kind of brings me to a broader question that I just want to reach out to the selectmen about. I've heard numerous times in the past that no taxpayer dollars are supposed to be spent on the park. How involved are you looking for the town to be in projects like this?
None.
So, well, I think
I'm going to come right out and say it, Joe. We voted at town.
Let him finish.
Not $1.
So, again, I'm trying to, right now we empty trash cans down there. We don't do much more than that, but I think there is some thought process in the future, according to the chairman, Susan Adams, that they would like the highway, it's not the highway, I'm sorry, the Parks Committee or the Parks to take a little more active role down there in helping with some of the routine maintenance. So I'm just really trying to figure out where the board wants to proceed with this. Since they are town employees, it is taxpayer dollars. And I've heard that, as Tia just said, no taxpayer dollars. So
Leon's hand was up.
Leon.
Just to wave a little red flag. We've had trouble in the past with the Corps of Engineers about activity, cutting brush or anything else in that area. And you want to make darn sure before any riprap is put along the river or anything, that it's totally approved by the Corps of Engineers, because they get real snotty about anybody doing anything that they haven't been kissed off on. You can tell from my attitude, I don't like having to deal with them, but we don't have any choice, and we can get in real trouble from messing with the waterfront on that river.
Leon, that's about the most I've ever seen you get fired up.
I haven't even started.
I think Scott can answer some of that because he has met with the Army Corps down there. So
go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, we did. We met with the Army Corps, and there was another individual down there with him too. And just to cut it short, the Army Corps said that anything over elevation 420 is not their issue. But what you do have, though, is the shoreline protection permit, which is 250 feet. So it's the DES that we have to be afraid of. But you're right, Leon. We do have to make sure that the Army Corps knows what we're doing. And they were there on the first time we went down to look at this to see who could participate. And they were very helpful in giving us some good ideas. But Scott, believe me, we understand that it'll be the DES that we have to get past in that one there. So
Scott, just as a point of reference, where is contour 420?
It's up probably 4 or 5 feet from the river's usual flow.
So does it extend onto the park proper, or is it on the banking?
You know, the professor from UNH, you know, that's been helping us along with this for the past 11 years, has gone in and he's put pins in along the riverbank, and he checks them every year to see how much of the bank is going back. And that's up about 3 feet from the river a few weeks ago. Okay. So that would be the elevation.
Great, thank you. Tia.
So Scott, from my understanding, based on conversations with somebody who's gone out to look at this area is where the rope swing is that continues to be taken down and then reappearing. So, and the rope swing this year apparently wasn't taken down. Could that alleviate some of the problem that you're experiencing down there? Well, and this erosion issue has been a problem for as long as anybody in town can remember.
Well, right? The thing that came to our attention, Tia, was the fact that that rope swing is what caused all this. There used to be a fence there 2 years ago. The fence was knocked over and taken down. And then the kids and the adults that are using that swing are using that. And they're the ones that have been dragging it down. And they've taken a good half of the trailway with it. And so, you know, there's a good question about what do we do with the swing. And frankly, the Azalea Park folks have stepped away from that one. We just want to make sure we can reinforce the bank and get the trail back where it should be. And as far as it's easy to deal with. I think that's something for the board to decide.
Well, my thought is the tree swing is more of a liability than somebody falling in the river.
No, it's not. I've been here for 36 years and I've never heard of anybody getting hurt on that swing, which I should knock on wood after saying that. But you know, anybody that's walking down that path when it's dark at night, or maybe on a bike, will fall into that river and hit the concrete. That would be a bad thing. And that's why we need to fix it.
Okay. Further questions?
I'd just like to add one more thing too. Leo came down and gave some good advice about what to do. And to Tom Ballesteros, the engineer and the UNH professor, has also given us some good ideas. And actually, we were kind of surprised on how it wouldn't be cheap, but it wouldn't be greatly expensive to do this work. And so we do intend on moving ahead. I'm speaking for the Azalea Park Committee now. I'm moving ahead and seeing just what kind of funding we can get, or what kind of costs we can get to do this work. That'll be a future event for us to bring to the select board.
Okay, thank you. All right, Joe, keep going.
Well, no, so that brings me back to that whole point, though. I do think we need to figure out, there is a liability if somebody gets hurt down there right now with the river the way it is. And whether I have the highway department go down and just put a couple of Jersey barriers, or at least that where I think we need to take something, because I do think there's a liability if somebody would ever fall in there.
I think what you need to do is post it of pass at your own risk. Like, I'm sorry, I can walk down, the side of the riverbank, in front of Daniels and slip in just as easy as I could slip in down there, like we all kind of have responsibility for ourselves. So if it's going to be that big of an issue, I think we need to post it.
Joe, you got a picture of what this looks like?
Yeah,
I do.
Do you have it up, Scott? I know you have one.
It'd take me a minute to find it, but I do have it.
Okay.
I might be able to find it too. Hold on.
Let's let.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is an agenda item. I think we're getting really carried away on this subject. It was part of Joe's report. Why don't we put it on the agenda for a meeting? It's not, unless it's urgent. That's just my opinion. I'm trying to
parse
money either.
Yeah, I'm trying to parse Joe's vocabulary if to whether or not it's risen to the occasion of urgent.
Well, and we're halfway through the discussion anyway. We might as well finish it.
All right.
Joe,
I think
urgent.
I think that we need to do something. Whether we post the sign, I mean, I'm okay with that too. I think we need to make sure we're just trying to absorb some of the town's liability if somebody were ever to go down there and get hurt. I was open to anything, whether it be some landscape fencing or, again, we can post a sign and say enter at your own risk. I think that's fine as well. But I wanted that piece, and then I wanted the direction from the board as far as how involved the town should be involved in the park.
Well, I know when the Azalea Park Committee was formed, it was made pretty clear that we weren't looking to spend any taxpayer dollars down there.
Yep.
And it was reconfirmed at town meeting.
Yeah. I don't think anybody really objects to us emptying garbage cans and maybe helping take a tree down. But what's that?
That is using taxpayer dollars though, Chris. So you got to be careful.
I understand.
Spend $1.
I understand.
I'm going to share my screen real quickly. This is one of the pictures just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So this is the riverbank that we're looking at, and you can see where it's eroding into the path. And then you have the concrete stairs where that tree is, obviously where the rope swing in question is.
So how much of the walking path is eroded? It looks like about 1.5 feet.
Yeah.
And that's eroded by not necessarily water going up there. It's just eroded by foot traffic.
That is eroded by human. Yeah, the Army Corps came out there and looked at it, and they also confirmed that it's not the river eroding it; it's human use.
Yeah. And how wide's that path? 10 feet total.
God, I'm assuming it's right around that. Yeah. I mean, there used to be a fence along there. I can tell you that. You can, if you look on this, where this gentleman is right here behind, there's a fence, and there's a fence on this other side as well. So there was a fence at one point going along the riverside.
Chris, can Pat's Peak donate some ski fence?
Have the concerts down there.
There you go. I like that.
Trying to save a buck.
Isn't that the fence that was thrown in the river?
That is the fence that was thrown in the river, I believe, yes.
Nice. I know that it's a little bit, does the park redevelopment plan address the constant erosion of that path? I know that you guys have been working higher up in the park. Does any of the stuff that you guys are looking at address that?
No, we did not address that in the monitoring report that we've submitted, but it will come back next year. We have to do it every year for 5 years anyway.
No, I think he means, Scott, the overall scope of the park and where we're looking to go with it. Does that address this erosion issue, or is this something new that's just kind of popped up?
Yeah, correct, this is new. This is a new issue. Yeah, the fact that we're losing the bank is a big issue. Yep. The other designs are just on hold right now.
Is the rope swing still up?
You know, it's been taken down a number of times over the years, and it goes back up within a week.
Well, I think
it's up. I think it's up now.
Well, it needs to be chopped down.
I think there's 2 of them up there now.
Either cut the tree down or cut the limbs off.
No, there's a couple of trees on it too. It's more than one. They're very creative with that.
Why don't you build a deck that the kids can use to launch off of? Why do we always have to be all about no?
That would be a big ticket to get past DES to put a dock on it.
On the Shoreline Protection Act.
And Chris, would you like to donate those services?
I would be more than happy to donate those services. We're always no. You can't do this, can't do that.
I'll remember that in 2 weeks.
Kids are going to be kids. There's a big difference between that and what I'm going to do.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. To Peter's point, I think you should make that an agenda item in a couple of weeks. We're going to get through the budget hearing, but
okay.
All right, selectmen reports. Vice Chair Hooper, what do you got?
I think I just gave you my report.
Selectman Flynn, what do you got?
0.
Scott Osgood.
Yeah, the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission had its quarterly meeting last week, actually. And the one item that is for Henniker is, well, that they talk about the 10-year plan and the work down there with our borderline on 202 with Hopkinton. And they're working on the design, but right now the funding is very short for it. That's the report that I got from them. So they're going to go away, moving along with it, with just the design. They did not tell me what the design is going to be yet. I don't think the DOT knows what kind of design they want to do for that. But it's moving along slowly and it needs more money, so it'll take some time.
Did they indicate what kind of delay? Year, 2?
No, just the fact that it wasn't as funded enough as they expected it to be. And so they're maybe adding a year to the plan.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, too, they did have the economic development director for the state, Will Aldolfo, and he gave a good talk about the economies and the planning, and all in all, it was a very positive report that he gave.
Okay, cool. Selectman Parker.
We had a road management committee meeting and reaffirmed our support for the stuff that we talked about also in the capital improvement program, but also reviewed some of the stuff that Leo's been doing and some of the problems he's had. His biggest problems lately have been with equipment. Then you heard Tia's report of what we dealt with in the capital improvements program. And I got a ZBA meeting tomorrow night.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, the ZBA meeting is for a variance and a special exception for work that Murphy wants to do on what was Hattie Edmonds' house.
He wants to add another apartment, doesn't he, Leon?
Well, add is an interesting question because there's been 2 or 3 different things there, but he wants to square it away as a 2-apartment building.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right. I have no update. I had no reports. So.
Oh, I should probably mention the planning board did hear a case regarding a radio tower that that's going to be coming up again for a hearing over on Liberty Hill. Just wanted to make you aware since it is a project of regional impact.
Did you get much feedback on that?
It wasn't, we didn't accept the case yet. So they're going to be coming up, or they're scheduled for a balloon test. I believe it's January 27th, starting first thing in the morning. I believe they're going till like noontime or something like that. And they'll take photos to see where the tower might be visible throughout our community. And there has been a list developed of where those locations, where photos will be taken, have been identified. And then after that, we'll schedule the hearing on the case.
Got it. Okay. Anything else?
Hope that's it.
That's the 27th from 9 o'clock until noon.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. At this point of the evening, it's time for public commentary number 2. Are there any members of the audience that wish to address the board on any subject matter that was discussed tonight or any other items? Please raise your hand, text, up and down on 1 foot, something to get our attention. Anyone? Joe, Tia, you seeing anybody on your chat?
I'm not.
Somebody named Mick has a hand up.
Mick, go ahead.
I don't have my hand up. I don't know where that one came from.
That came from Leon. That's twice he's duped us tonight, Mick.
Yeah.
Maybe he saw me waving hi. So hi.
Sure has got a hand up on my screen.
There we go.
I
Anybody else?
just noticed on the chat too, Heidi had a comment. I think it was about the Azalea Park. It says by vandals. But frankly, you know, there was some issues with some younger kids, and they are paying the price for having done that damage.
Okay. Joe, you want to unmute Heidi? She has her hand up.
I just asked to unmute her.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I have respect for everyone that's putting effort into Azalea Park. And yes, I made a comment about vandals, but vandals would include people that keep putting up a swing that's being taken down. It's eroding that area. This becomes our liability because it's a town park and a town path. The sad reality to that park is it's hidden. I don't care what you do down there. It's like when we put the skateboard park on the way far side of the school, and it was a problem because nobody could see it or monitor it. I don't think you're ever going to do away with that. And again, even the rope swing is a vandal activity if you took it down and they put it up. I think you're going to forever be going 1 step forward and 2 steps back in this park, which is a sad reality. It's not that I'm opposed to it. I loved the broader plan and swimming area and all those things, but it remains a hidden area. And I think you're going to fight against it forever. Just an opinion, not that I'm against the park.
Well, Heidi, I can say too, one topic that comes up quite a bit in our meetings is cameras, putting cameras up down there. So.
I hate to tell you, Scott, the vandals will get around those. The people that want to, I've dealt a lot with youth, and the people that want to get in trouble can do it right under your nose and figure out how to hide it from you. And they're going to climb the tree and take the camera out.
Yep.
I don't agree that that's an answer. I just don't. Just an opinion. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi. Anybody else for public comment?
Mr. Chairman, just one comment. Back when I first came to town and we were working on different things over at Azalea Park, before any committee or anything was organized, I found out that there was a serious problem with the DES, as Scott mentions. They have a big influence over there. The town was fined very heavily because the representatives from the town went in and cut trees down in that embankment and brush out of there. Just what I would call almost a simple thing like that cost the town some money, and they lost. They couldn't get out of the fine. So I agree with Scott or anybody else that's worried about what you do down there in compliance with either the Army Corps or the DES. But we've had a bad experience already, and it's on record.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Joe, do we need a non-public?
I do not, no.
Okay.
Oh, good.
I know 2 of us said that.
Great.
So moved.
All right, not hearing any public comment. I'll shut it.
To adjourn.
My alarm just went off. It must be time to get up for the work.
That's right. All right. Motion made by Selectman Hooper to adjourn, seconded by Selectman Flynn. Further discussion, roll call vote. Chris, yes. Hooper.
Peter, yes.
Leon.
Peter, yes.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Scott, yes.
Yes.
Thank you all for attending the select board meeting.